friends, and welcome back to another video. So today I thought it would be a good idea to dive into some of my spoiler-free thoughts and feelings on Drums of Autumn. Now, this is the fourth book in the Outlander series, so at this point the books are starting to get a bit longer and we're starting to have a few more POVs, which I absolutely enjoyed. But before I dive into any of my other thoughts, I just want to clarify that these beginning thoughts are spoiler-free, and then later I will let you know when I start my spoiler-filled thoughts. So I'll just do some general spoiler-free thoughts at the beginning, and then at the end I will also do just my overall feelings on this book and how it contributes to the series. Also, if you see me looking down at any point in this video, it's because I'm consulting my notes. I read most of this series last year, so I think this book I read in maybe October or November of 2024. So it has been a while since I've dived into this. So I took some notes just to help me refresh things in my memory and to make this review a little bit better. Alright, so diving into some of my spoiler-free thoughts. This is definitely one of my favorite books in this series so far. I don't know if this is my absolute favorite, but it definitely gives A Breath of Snow and Ashes a run for its money for my favorite in the series. I just absolutely love this one. I love that it's set in America. I love that we get a little bit more development for Brianna and Roger, who Brianna is Claire and Jamie's daughter, so we get a little bit more development for them in this book. And I just love that it's a very complete story. So it is a self-contained story, which is different from some of the later books in the series. I found that after this book, they tend to be a little bit more episodic. So that means that this book and the few books before it are self-contained, but after that, it feels like just another chapter of their journey. And I really like that it's self-contained because it feels like it has a beginning, middle, and end. So it has a full story contained in this one book. I like some of the episodic books, but it feels like all of them are incomplete. And she started this habit of ending her books with a cliffhanger. And I'm personally not a big fan of ending every single book with a cliffhanger. I think it's something that she overdoes a little bit in some of the later books, but I appreciate that this one doesn't really do that. Also, I will say we get introduced to some new characters. Some of them are very nefarious and will follow us through to a few books, and some of it feels a little bit dragged out to me, so it's not so much of a critic of this book but rather just the whole series arc. So I don't know if that takes away from this book specifically, but just wanted to let you know that. But I do absolutely adore this book. I love that we get to see Claire and Jamie being back together for a full book. This is the first full book that they're together since Outlander, so I was super excited for that. And we really get some moments of payoff in this book that make the 20 years apart feel really worthwhile, to me at least. So I appreciated getting this book off of the heels of Voyager. This really cemented my love for the Outlander series. I can't say enough good things about this book, and I just really adore it. If you haven't read this book series, I highly recommend that you do, and I think that this book in particular might make you fall in love with it. And if you don't have the time or just don't really want to read the books, you can definitely go into the TV show. I will say, starting from season 4, which is the season that adapts this book, there start to be some more changes from the book, and the TV series is not as faithful an adaptation, but I still highly recommend it. Alright, so this next section is going to be spoiler filled. This is your warning. If you have not read this book and you're looking to read the Outlander series, consider yourself warned. Do not go past this point. I will give you the all clear at the end of the spoiler free section to give you just all of my overall thoughts and summary, but as of this point it is spoiler filled thoughts, so you have been warned. Just wanted to let you know, so we're all clear. And I will also try to leave a little sign somewhere on the screen that tells you if there are spoilers in the section that I'm talking about, but I will leave timestamps down below so you can skip ahead to that timestamp if you don't want any spoiler filled thoughts. Alright, so diving in, this book picks up kind of right where we leave off with Voyager. So Voyager involved a lot of Claire and Jamie traveling around the world. They end up in Jamaica, they end up in the West Indies, they end up in a bunch of different countries. They eventually make it to the island of Hispaniola, which, if you don't know what that is the island that contains both Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And at the end of Voyager, we find out that they've actually washed up in America and they have made it to Georgia. So that's kind of where we pick up, and we pick up in June 1767. So they've made it to America, and it's been a little bit of time actually because they've traveled north from Georgia. So they're in Charleston, South Carolina, and they're watching someone be hanged. This is someone that I believe Jamie was with in Ardmere prison, someone that he was close friends with, and it is a little bit devastating to see that, especially to have that be the very start of this book. But you can really tell that things are in motion in America because we are gearing up to the American Revolution. So we also meet Rollo, who is this half dog, half wolf that Ian ends up winning in a card game. And I will say I absolutely adore Rollo. He doesn't play a super huge role in the books, but he is so sweet. I love the bond that Ian and Rollo share with each other, and I was just so happy to meet him. We don't have a lot of pets in the Outlander series, so I was just glad to get him in this, and I fell in love with him from the very beginning of this, even when Claire and Jamie are still hesitant about having Rollo with them. Alright, I could sit here all day and talk about Rollo, but let's move on. So we also meet Stephen Bonnet, and I absolutely despise him. You know that he is bad news from the very beginning of this book, and I understand why Jamie wants to help him, especially because Jamie has been a convicted felon before. He's almost been hanged, but Jamie and Stephen Bonnet are different. Jamie is at his core very good moral person, and he's just found himself in some bad situations, whereas Stephen Bonnet is just not a very good person. He has a lot going against him, but Jamie doesn't know that yet, and it's definitely foreshadowing for some really bad, horrible, horrendous things that are going to be happening later in this book. So I understand why Jamie wants to save him, but ultimately it was the wrong call to make here, and the whole time I was trying not to throw the book across the room because I was like, no, Jamie, you're gonna regret this, and he absolutely definitely does. Moving on from that, so they save Stephen Bonnet from being hanged, and they need money because Jamie has to pay alimony to Leary, as if we remember that from the last book, he has to pay her alimony because of the divorce contract papers that are signed. So he's trying to sell one of the gemstones that they have. They found these gemstones on that island where they had all that Jacobite gold, and he is looking to sell it, but he actually gets a different kind of offer, and he is offered a proposal to take up some land in North Carolina, and he's offered this by Governor Tryon. So this is where Jamie's ties with the loyalist cause starts, and we know that this is going to lead to some trouble for him later on, especially as we are gearing up to the start of the revolution. But he is very tempted by the offer of this land, and at first he doesn't really accept, but later on he will accept the offer. And it's very interesting because we get to see him being split between wanting this land and having that loyalty because he is bound to this governor, but also the fact that he knows that the rebels are going to win, and that's not a big key point in this book yet, but we know that that will gear up for later books. Also, we head to River Run, but before we head to River Run, we meet John Quincy Myers, and he is someone that will continue showing up in all the books, even now through Go Tell the Beatles That I'm Gone, which is the one that I'm currently reading, and it is the 9th book in the Outlander series and is the last one that has been published. He is still showing up in the narrative, so he is an important character and we get to meet him. He's a little bit interesting. He seems very rugged, like part of the land almost. He's got a grown out beard and everything. Very man of the land, man off the grid kind of person. We also meet Philip Wiley, who seems a little bit slimy, and there's definitely a reason for why he seems slimy. A little bit of foreshadowing of that. We know we definitely can't trust him, and he will show up again in later books, but just know from this first impression he is a little bit slimy because he's gonna get up to some interesting things that we do not like later on. Moving on, we have another encounter with Bonnet and his pirate gang, and this is when they are on their way to River Run. So they're sailing on the river, and he ends up stealing Claire's ring. So it is her ring from Frank, so it's her gold ring, and they steal all of their gemstones. So now they have nothing to sell to try to make that money, and he kills someone in their crew while he's at it. But they eventually finally make it to River Run, basically empty-handed like paupers, and Jamie feels really bad that he's meeting his aunt Jocasta for the first time with no money. And we are in July of 1767 at this point, so we meet Jocasta, and she has a party for Claire and company, and Philip Wiley, Herman Husband, and John Quincy Myers all attend this party, and we will learn that Herman Husband is also key to the lead up to the Revolutionary War in the next book, so important that we know that he is first showing up in this book. We also find that there is a woman in Jocasta's sawmill that has been left to die. So she had an abortion performed on her, and it was botched terribly, so she's bleeding out and she's dying, and Jamie decides he's going to question Sergeant Murchison. So he is someone that has been seen around the area. He is in charge of the Navy's contract with Jocasta's goods on River Run, and he was formerly a guard at Ardmere Prison. So we have some history with Sergeant Murchison. He doesn't like Jamie, and Jamie doesn't like him. Moving on to August, Claire and company end up slaving a slave named Polly Ann, and we find out that she was the one that was performing the abortion, I believe, and they help her escape to live with native people. And Jamie also kills a bear and he gets the nickname of Bear Killer from the local natives. I think that's really cool, and he definitely doesn't think that he deserves this nickname, but he is going to take it on because he knows that it means goodwill with the natives, and he knows that the native people are a big crucial part of the Revolutionary War, and many of them will side with the English, so he's trying to set up some goodwill there, so maybe they will side with him in the upcoming war. Also, we find the area in North Carolina where Fraser's Ridge will be, and this is an area that has a bunch of strawberry bushes that are growing there, so it looks like it's really meant to be and it's destined because the last name Fraser is actually related to strawberries. I believe it is French, so that's really cute, and we have these really cute scenes between Claire and Jamie as they are connecting and they're realizing that this is where their home is going to be. It's going to be the first time that they share a home together in the over 20 plus years since they were married, so really exciting to see that. I love just all of the Claire and Jamie bonding moments in this book. I absolutely adore them. Moving on to September, we finally see that Fraser's Ridge is being established, and this is super exciting. Like I said, they finally have a home together, and Fraser's Ridge is going to be the center of so many different events over the years. It's going to be full of drama and chaos going forward, and it is their home base throughout what I think is going to be the rest of the series. Obviously, I don't know what's going to happen in book 10 yet because that hasn't been published yet, but as of book 9, we are back on Fraser's Ridge, so it is super important to the rest of the series so far. Also in October, Claire meets some native people, so she meets a wise woman named Nyawen, and she gives her some of her like potions and things to heal, and she also gives Claire a prophecy. She tells Claire that she will come into her full powers when all her hair is white, so basically when she is older. We also meet Gabrielle, Bertha, and Nakognaweta. I butchered that name, I'm so sorry, and these all come with Nyawen, and they are local natives. And in December, Jamie accidentally sprains his back. He has a few days where he can't move at all, he's immobilized, and Claire finds him in the snow and stays with him until he recovers. I thought this was really super adorable and heartwarming, and you really see the strength of their bond to see that Claire is choosing to rough out this storm with him when he can't move. Like, I definitely wouldn't have been strong enough to do that, but I love to see that they are so close and so bonded. I love all of the romantic moments between Claire and Jamie in this book. So then we make it to 1768, and we jump forward to spring, and some Arzmere families have made it to the ridge, and they're settling there, and at this point, Claire's prowess as a healer is becoming well known in the area, so she's leaving on a lot of house calls to heal people. And in August, Claire finds a human skull after she leaves the Muellers. So she's at the Muellers attending a birth there of their daughter-in-law, and she's leaving and finds this human skull, and she meets the ghost of a native person as well, so that's really scary. It kind of freaks her out. At first, she thinks she's seeing a real live person, but we later find out this person is dead, and we're gonna learn more about this skull. He's going to be important in the next book, so definitely something to note from Drums of Autumn. So then we skip forward to October, and we get some more of Lord John Grey. This is his first appearance since Voyager, and he shows up in almost every single book after this. I think he just doesn't show up in the Fiery Cross, and I was super happy to see LJG back on the page again. We also see a young William who's coming to visit Fraser's Ridge, and he, if you didn't remember, is Jamie's biological son, and Lord John Grey has basically adopted him and is his putative stepfather. So we have that all going on, and Claire is definitely very suspicious of Lord John Grey and why he has come there. She's definitely questioning his motives, and honestly, I was a little bit too, but I definitely wanted Claire to give Lord John Grey a little bit more of a break than she did in this one. But to be fair to her, all she knows is that he is in love with her husband, so I can't really blame her too much. Also, Lord John Grey falls ill with the measles. Young Ian does as well, so Claire has to take care of them and nurse him through that. And Jamie ends up taking Willie to a local native village while Lord John Grey recuperates. They don't want William to get sick because the measles is highly contagious, and in this time period, obviously there was no vaccinations or inoculations or anything like that against disease. So then Sir Mueller comes to the cabin. This is while Lord John Grey is recovering, and he's almost fully recovered at this point. And he comes claiming that his daughter-in-law and grandchild died because of a native curse, or really they just died because of the measles outbreak that has been spreading. And he blames the natives, and he brings a native scalp to Claire, and he offers it to her as protection from the native curse. Claire is absolutely horrified and disgusted by this, and I really felt for her in this position. She wants to kind of appease the Muellers because she has healed them, but also she has a friend in one of the native people, and she knows that this is just hostilities because of a misunderstanding and culture clash between the natives and the German family. Also, Jamie arrives at this native village, and he finds out that it's being being ravaged by illness, so he and William kind of stay away from it as much as they can so that young Willie doesn't get sick. Meanwhile, while all this is happening, in 1969, in June, July, we see that Bree and Roger are going to a Celtic festival in New England. So Roger comes to visit, and when they're at that festival, he is singing, and we get to see his amazing singing voice. And keep a note on that, pin that, because it will be important later on in the series. Roger's voice is something that is very important to him, and I just love that we see him in action singing, and we see how much joy he brings to other people. Also, we see them watch the moon landing at Joe Abernathy's house, so that's really cool because we're getting another historical moment, and this is something that Claire's not seeing in the present time because she's traveled to the past. And this does eventually lead to a major fight between Roger and Bree because Roger decides that he wants to marry Bree, that he wants to be with her forever, and Bree feels like she's not ready. She's unsure if they should be together forever, especially considering the fact that she saw how Claire and Frank's relationship just didn't work out for them, and she wants to be really sure before she marries someone. It's understandable to understand her perspective, and I also understand Roger's perspective. He's a little bit more traditional in that sense, being a few years older than her, so I definitely get it. But I really feel for Bree because she's seen this relationship that really didn't work out, that was really toxic, kind of play out. So I don't blame her either. It's really tough being torn between the two of them, and my heart was breaking a little bit just seeing them have this fight and trying to reconcile these differences with each other. Alright, so moving along to December, Bree and Roger decide to spend the holidays together in Scotland. This is so cute. We get to see them together again. And then we skip forward to 1970 where Roger finds a notice of the Frasers' death in a fire, or it's their supposed death. We don't know for sure that they actually died there, but he decides he doesn't want to tell Bree about this. Now, I think that this was a major mistake on Roger's part, and it will definitely cause a lot of issues later on, and it propels most of the plot going on in this story later because it leads to a fight between them. And it really was upsetting to me because it shows that he doesn't trust Bree enough to tell her, and he didn't think it through because obviously she had previously been studying history, so there was a good chance that she'd find it by herself. So I just thought that it would have been better for him to have been upfront, but I understand why Diana didn't do that because then we wouldn't really have much of the rest of the plot of this book. So moving on to 1971 in April, Roger is planning to go to a conference after Bree says that she's going to be busy over the summer, so they're not going to see each other. And in May, Bree travels through the stones because she finds the notice of her parents' death, and this is where Claire and Jamie supposedly die, so she wants to try to stop it from happening. And in June of that year, Roger realizes that Bree has traveled through the stones, so he also goes through the stones around Midsummer Day, and he's trying to find Bree. And this is kind of the last that we see of the present-ish timeline, or the 20th century timeline, until much later in the books. We don't really get any more of the 1960s or 70s again, and we really won't see anything of the 20th century again for a while, so we're gonna be set all in one timeline now going forward for quite a bit. Alright, so then we pick up in June of 1769, and this is where Bree arrives at Lallybroch. She meets the Murrays there, so this is her father's family. She meets Jenny, she meets young Jamie, and she meets a bunch of other relations. This was super heartwarming to me. I absolutely love seeing this part of the book. You definitely miss Scotland a lot in this book, so I love that we get a little bit of Scotland here, even though it doesn't last long. We also have an interaction between Bree and Leary here, and let's just say it doesn't turn out well, and they kind of have a big fight, and Leary storms off. But in July, Bree and her new companion Lizzie decide that they're going to travel from Inverness to South Carolina to try to find Bree's parents. At the same time, Roger starts going by the last name Mackenzie, so he stops using his adoptive father's last name of Wakefield and he starts going by his natural name of Mackenzie, and he travels on the Gloriana as a ship hand with Stephen Bonnet as the captain. This is definitely bad news. We know that bad things are going to happen with Bonnet, and you definitely can feel the eeriness in all of the pages where Bonnet features. You just know this man is not good news at all. But he's going to travel to the New World. He's in search of Bree, and he's desperate to find her, so he just takes the first way that he can to the Americas. So in July or August, Roger ends up saving Morag Mackenzie, who is his direct ancestor. She is his 4 times great-grandmother, and he saves her and her son Jeremiah from being thrown overboard on this ship because it is believed that young Jeremiah has smallpox. When he doesn't, he just has a small rash from being a baby, and he saves them from being thrown overboard, and this is something that will come back and be important in one of the plot lines from the Fiery Cross. In September, we see that Lizzie has a recurring malaria fever, so from this point on into the rest of the books, we see that Lizzie gets sick periodically because she has contracted malaria. And now there is really no cure for malaria, but rather she just has to go through these fevers. And there are some remedies that help keep it kind of in remission, but she will never be fully cured, if that makes sense. So because of this, Bree is even more desperate to return to her mother because she wants Lizzie to be healed. And Roger and Bree are handfasted and they consummate their relationship. Bree learns that Roger kept news of her parents' death from her, and this leads to a major fight between Roger and Bree ends up leaving. Again, like I mentioned before, it was definitely a mistake for Roger to keep that from Brianna, but I think she overreacts. She definitely has a little bit of that Fraser temper, and she doesn't think it through or doesn't kind of try to understand his perspective at all before storming off. But what can you expect from Jamie Fraser's daughter? And we really see that this instance is going to lead to some issues going forward because Lizzie mistakenly thinks that Roger raped Brianna. She has some misinterpretation of what actually transpired there, and there is miscommunication that leads her to this assumption, and this leads to some major events through the rest of this book. And it is frustrating because it definitely could have been avoided or easily clarified if they all communicated. That was one of my biggest gripes with this book, is that a lot of the conflict that happened in it is because of miscommunication issues, and that's definitely not one of my favorite things to see in a book. I don't love that, so that does detract a little bit from Gems of Autumn for me. But going forward, before I digress, Bree is raped by Stephen Bonnet when she tries to retrieve her mother's gold ring. She sees that he has her mother's ring because it's very distinctive looking to her, and she sees some sort of engraving on there that Frank put into it. And this, like I said before, will lead to many long-standing repercussions, and it will lead to a lot of problems to come for the Frasers and the Mackenzies, not just in this book, but for the next two books after this. So it leads to a lot of issues. Bree ends up meeting Jamie and they head to Fraser's Ridge. This is absolutely heartwarming. It was so beautiful. I absolutely love this scene, and it definitely is some major payoff after all of the anguish of seeing Claire and Jamie being separated for 20 years. We definitely get to see a lot of beautiful scenes just throughout this book that makes that 20-year wait worth it. And I'm glad that we got this after Voyager, after seeing all of that struggle between the two of them. I really think that Voyager was focused on their separation and this book is about uniting, and I loved that they had these two complementary themes. And they also bond over their love of hunting. Bree was taught how to hunt by her father Frank, so she knows how to hunt, and they bond over that. Moving along into October, Bree realizes that she's pregnant and she thinks that Bonnet is the father of her child, but she asks Claire not to say anything to Jamie because she knows that Jamie will overreact, will try to hunt him down, which is absolutely true. And so she tells Claire to keep it a secret, and this will lead to some more problems down the line. Again, more miscommunication, and we keep rolling that stone down that hill, and it's gonna go crashing into the ocean very soon. So Lizzie ends up telling Jamie and Ian about Roger coming, and she sees him and she thinks he's the man that raped Brianna, so she tells him that. And again, the entire plot point was caused by the miscommunication. I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but it definitely frustrated me a lot, and I wish that they had communicated with Bree before just running on this assumption. Like, definitely clarify this with the girl that was raped before doing something about it. Like, again, they don't think it through. Bree doesn't think everything through. Roger doesn't think her actions through. There's a lot of not thinking happening here. So Jamie and Ian go and they beat Roger up and they sell him to the Iroquois, and he's going to eventually make it to the Mohawk from there. Roger tries to escape from being with the natives but fails, and he ends up finding another stone circle in the Americas. So now we know that the stone circles can be in multiple different places, that it's not just the one at Craig Nadoon, that there might be more. This is important to note and will play a role later in the books. In November, Claire tells Bree that she can perform an abortion on her if she wants it. So if she wants to terminate the pregnancy, it would be very dangerous, but Claire can perform an abortion. And Bree decides that she wants to keep the child, that she doesn't want to abort it. And Jamie and Ian realize that they sold the wrong person after they see a drawing that Bree has made of Roger. They realize that matches the person that they beat up, and that's not the person that raped her. So Bree shares that she was actually raped by Stephen Bonnet, not by Roger. In December, it's decided that Claire and company will go to find Roger, and Bree is going to stay at River Run in the meantime. She tells Claire to go with Jamie and Ian when looking for Roger because the last time that Roger saw Jamie and Ian was when he was being beat up, and so obviously the only experiences he has with them are negative ones. So she wants Claire to be there as kind of a mediator, and because she already has an established relationship with Roger previously from the future. Going into 1770 in January, Claire and company end up traveling traveling north and they come to a Tuscarora village. And in February, Bree is trying to keep busy at River Run. She paints a lot, she tries to distract herself, and she's also warding off the suitors that Aunt Jocasta is trying to push on her, because Jocasta thinks that Roger's not coming back, so she's trying to get Bree married off before her child is born. And Roger is living as a captive of the Mohawk tribe. So Claire and Jamie end up arriving at Snaketown in February, where they think Roger is, but it will still take them some more time to reach Bree, and they know that Bree will likely have given birth by the time that they return, so they think that Bree and Roger are kind of stuck in the past, unless Roger decides that he wants to go off by himself. In March, we see that Lord John Grey comes to River Run with news about his own search for Roger, and Bree tries to blackmail Lord John Grey into marrying her when she figures out that he is gay. And in this time period, it is a crime to be gay, and it definitely could lead to him being hanged or worse. It just shows how desperate Bree is in this moment. She's starting to feel like Roger might never return to her, and so she's trying to come up with a contingency plan of what to do and how to ward off all these suitors that Jocasta is really trying to throw at her. Also, it is not an unreasonable thought to have, even from the reader's perspective, because Roger's been abused by the Mohawk. Like, he's not living as like an adoptee, he's kind of abused, he's mistreated, so it would be fair enough for him to decide he doesn't want anything to do more with the Frasers, especially after Jamie and Ian were the ones that sold him and beat him up, so not unreasonable to think. Roger ends up befriending a priest named Alexander, and he's also being held as a prisoner by the Mohawk. Father Alexander is later executed because he refuses to baptize his illegitimate child. He had an affair with one of the local women, and he had come there as part of a mission to try to baptize all the people to get them to be Christian, and the Mohawk are not upset about the fact that they had an affair or that they had a child out of marriage. They're upset that the child is not being baptized, and that's why Alexander is being held as prisoner. His lover ends up dying by suicide. She ends her own life, and chaos ensues from there, and a native man ends up dying in the hubbub. And so because of this, they decide that they want to hold on to Roger because they need someone to replace this man, but Ian offers himself in Roger's place, and he ends up being adopted into the Mohawk tribe to replace that native man. This is the last that we will see of young Ian for quite a while, and it's super bittersweet. I hate seeing this parting because Jamie is so sad, Ian is so sad. He looks up to Jamie so much, and I love when Jamie tells him that he is truly a man of worth. Like, we know that Ian is, and I love seeing that. I just love the bond between Ian and Jamie. I love young Ian as a whole in this, and I wish that we had more of him, but I definitely understand why he does this. I just also love the fact that he's so willing to sacrifice himself for his cousin's happiness, so definitely was super bittersweet to see that, but I'm excited to see more of Ian's arc and journey in the later books. We definitely get to see some more of him later on. We just won't see him for a while. Alright, so then we get to April, and Bree and Lord John Grey go to visit Stephen Bonnet. He has been arrested and he is set to be hanged for his crimes, and provided what we think is going to be the end of his life, Bree goes because she wants some sort of closure, and it is really empowering to see her confront her abuser. Definitely is something that I think she really needs for her healing process, and little do we know this is not the last that we will see of Stephen Bonnet, but it is really great that we get some like closure for that. She also tells Stephen Bonnet that the child she's carrying is his, and obviously we don't know for sure that it's his. We know that it could be, but it could also be Roger's, and I think this was a mistake on Bree's part to tell Stephen Bonnet that it was his child, but again, she thinks that he is going to be hanged the next day or in a few days, so she doesn't see the harm in it, but definitely will come to bite her later because, spoiler alert, he doesn't die here. So in May, Claire and Jamie end up arriving at River Run. They've made it all the way back from going to New York, so they made the journey from North Carolina to New York and back at this point, but they come without Roger and obviously without young Ian. Bree gives birth to a son who is named Jeremiah, nicknamed Jemmy, and Claire and Jamie are both present when she goes into labor, and I absolutely appreciated that they made it in time to see her birth and to like help her through that process as much as they can. I absolutely hated that they changed this in the show, but I know this is not really like a show review or anything, but I definitely missed seeing this scene in the TV show in season 4. So in June, Roger does return to Fraser's Ridge, and he vows that he's going to take Bree's child as his own regardless of the baby's biological father or his DNA or anything like that. So he promises that he's going to take this child as his own. This is a major step for Roger to take, especially considering how traditional he is, and I'm glad to see it. It does take him some time to come to this decision, but once he does, he's fully in all the way, and I really appreciated that. In August, Duncan Innes comes to ask Jamie permission to propose to his aunt Jocasta, and Jamie agrees that they can be married. And so everyone heads off to this gathering at a mountain where all these Scottish families are going to gather together, and their wedding is going to take place. And in October, they are still on their journey there because it is quite a whiles away from where Fraser's Ridge is. And Roger asks Claire who was married to Galus and Dougal's son, and we have it confirmed that it was in fact Morag Mackenzie, who is the woman that Roger helped earlier in the book. So we know for sure at this point that she is his great-grandmother many times removed. So the Frasers and the Mackenzies end the story attending a gathering, and that's kind of where we leave off, and that's where we will pick up with the Fiery Cross. So I'm not going to go beyond that, obviously, because that's the end of the scope of this book, but I will share some of my overall thoughts in just a second, and I hope that you have enjoyed this part. Alright, so now that we've ended my spoiler-filled thoughts, I'm going to give you some of my spoiler-free thoughts and overall views on the book. So this is just going to summarize some of my feelings and go from there. So like I said, this is one of my favorite books in the series. I feel like Voyager is really a journey for Claire and Jamie's relationship. They're put through a lot of trials and struggles, and they really come close together, and they're better than ever in this book. They are so reunited, so connected again. And I think Drums of Autumn is the book that really tests Bree and Roger's relationship. What Voyager does for Claire and Jamie, this book does for Bree and Roger. It really tests their relationship and their bonds, and I love that they come out stronger through it. I definitely think that a lot of these events did need to happen, even though they happened because of miscommunication, and I found that super annoying. I think it was very important to their relationship growth, to making them stronger, and I think that they would not be the couple that they are or be as bonded as they are without the events of this book. This is also where we really see that Bree and Roger are getting ready to be really together, and that kind of leads into the Fiery Cross, but by the end of this, they're sure that they want to be with each other, whereas starting the story in the 1969 storyline, they are not sure of it. Like, Bree is not sure about Roger. She isn't sure that he's going to be her forever person, and Roger is sure about her. So that's kind of like they are on two different pages, but by the end of this, they kind of get onto the same page and they're in the same place together. So I appreciated that. I also loved seeing more of young Ian in this book. He is very present in this one, which is the first book where he's actually really present in the story, because in Voyager, we really see very little of him. We only see a little bit of him when Claire first travels to the past, and also a little of him when he is being rescued, but he is very majorly present in this book, so we get to see some of his personality. I love seeing his bond with his dog Rolo, and I just think that's super cute. I love that dynamic. And we do see that Fergus and Marsley take kind of a step back here. I feel like in some of these middle books especially, Diana kind of forgets that Fergus and Marsley are characters. Like, we just kind of forget about them. They're sort of there in the background, but they're not major players in the same way that they were in Voyager. And I feel like that was such a shame, such a missed opportunity, especially because Fergus is basically like an adoptive son to Jamie and Claire. But I digress. I was a little frustrated by that. And I will say that the miscommunication trope was used in here so much to advance the plot that I didn't appreciate that, but I know that it probably won't bother most people reading this book. It didn't take away enough to remove it from that top favorites of the series for me. I think it's still one of my all-time favorite books. I just love the story here. I love getting some more of America in the pre-revolutionary world, and I just love the history and adventure that happens in this one. There is so much going on in this book. You realize that all these pages are super action-packed, whereas I feel like some of the other books later in the series, thinking the Fiery Cross especially, wow, is that book really slow, but this one feels very action-packed, especially in comparison to the Fiery Cross. Alright, so those are basically most of my thoughts on Drums of Autumn. Have you read this book yet? Have you seen the 4th season of the TV show? I'd love to know. What do you think of the fact that this book is now taking place in America and it's not in Scotland anymore? Did that bother you at all, or did you like that it was in America? I personally like it, but I know it's not to everyone's taste, and it kind of loses some people when they leave Scotland. But I would love to know any of your thoughts or all of your thoughts on this book or the TV show, and I'm definitely willing to chat more in the comments. Just please use a spoiler tag if you are going to be using spoilers in your comments, so other viewers are forewarned. So if you've made it to this point in the video, or if you skipped through, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate each and every one of you that watches my videos, and I just want to say that wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, I hope that you are doing well. And if you like this video, give it a like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you for the next video. Bye!